As I sit here, reflecting on the whirlwind that has become my life, I can't help but start from the beginning, the beginnings of my family. The days when laughter filled our home and the air was thick with the scent of freshly baked cookies, the days when everything felt perfect. My name is Dan, and I once believed that I had everything I could ever want: a loving wife, 3 wonderful children, and a home filled with warmth. Melissa, my wife, was the heart of our family. She had a rare gift for turning the mundane into the extraordinary. I can still remember the countless times she turned simple dinners into lavish feasts with just a few ingredients and her endless creativity. Every birthday was a grand event: balloons, streamers, and cakes that could rival any bakery. I used to watch her in awe as she orchestrated these moments, a conductor of joy, ensuring that every detail was just right. Our eldest, Catherine, was the shining star of our family. At 18, she was preparing for college, full of dreams and aspirations that seemed to shine as brightly as her smile. I remember the late-night talks we shared as she poured her heart out about her hopes and fears. She was strong-willed, intelligent, and compassionate. Her laughter could light up the darkest room, and her presence brought an unparalleled sense of pride to my heart. It was hard to believe that just a few years earlier, she was our little girl, always asking questions and eager to learn about the world. Then there was Jack, our 16-year-old whirlwind. With his quick wit and mischievous grin, he was the one who kept us all on our toes. Jack had a knack for getting into trouble, whether it was sneaking out to meet friends or challenging me to a basketball game at the local court. But underneath that rebellious exterior lay a heart of gold. I often marveled at how he would stand up for his friends, fiercely loyal and protective, always ready to lend a hand or an ear. And last, but certainly not least, was Max, our 13-year-old bundle of energy. He had a curiosity about the world that reminded me of Catherine in her younger years. Max was always asking, why, or how, his mind racing with questions about everything from space travel to the latest video games. He had this innocent charm that made it impossible to stay mad at him for long, no matter how many times he forgot to do his chores. I cherished our weekend adventures, bike rides through the neighborhood and late-night movie marathons, just the two of us, sharing popcorn and laughter. Together, we made up a family that, to outsiders, seemed perfect. We had our share of ups and downs. Of course, what family doesn't? Yet, we managed to navigate through life's challenges with love and support for one another. Sunday dinners, family game nights, and spontaneous road trips filled our calendar. We were a close-knit unit, and I was proud of that. But as I sit here now, I can feel the weight of what's coming, a storm brewing on the horizon that will soon change everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and family. In the back of my mind, I can sense the cracks starting to form. The subtle shifts in our family dynamic that I was too blind to see. Melissa had always been the anchor of our household, the glue that held us together. But little did I know that the very foundation of our family was about to be tested in ways I could never have imagined. This is the story of our family, of joy and heartbreak, of trust shattered and rebuilt. And it all began with what I thought was an ordinary day, one that would set into motion a series of events that would unravel the fabric of our lives. It was a typical Friday afternoon when my world was gently rocked by an unexpected notification. I was sitting at my desk, the familiar hum of the household filling the air. Catherine was preparing for her final exams. Jack was practicing his guitar in the living room, and Max was busy assembling a new model airplane in the kitchen, all while Melissa was working late at the office. I had just finished my work for the week and was mentally preparing for a weekend filled with family time when my phone buzzed with a new alert. Glancing down, I saw the subject line flash across my screen: "Congratulations. You've won a weekend spa getaway for 2." My heart raced with excitement. Melissa had entered a contest weeks ago, and now here it was, the chance for us to escape the everyday grind and recharge together. A spa weekend seemed like the perfect way to unwind from our busy lives. We could relax, reconnect, and enjoy some quality time together without the distractions of daily responsibilities. My mind began to whirl with ideas. I envisioned us soaking in hot tubs, enjoying massages, and perhaps even indulging in a romantic dinner by candlelight. I imagined the look on Melissa's face when I revealed the surprise. It was bound to be a wonderful weekend, and I wanted to make it special for her. As I read through the details of the email, I realized that the getaway was for 2 nights at a luxurious spa resort just a few hours away. My excitement grew as I mentally plotted out our schedule. We could leave after the kids were settled in for the night, arrive at the resort, and have the entire Saturday to enjoy the amenities. I could hardly contain my eagerness, but there was one thing I needed to do first. I wanted to gather more information about the resort so I could plan the weekend to perfection. I decided to check out Melissa's work page. She often posted updates about her job and shared interesting articles related to her field. As I navigated to her profile, I was momentarily distracted by the warmth of our shared memories, photos from family vacations, candid shots of our kids laughing, and milestones we had celebrated together. But I quickly pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on finding information about the resort. Scrolling through her posts, I stumbled upon something I hadn't expected: a photo of Melissa with her colleagues at a recent company event. They were all laughing, and Melissa's smile was radiant, her eyes sparkling with joy. In the back of my mind, I thought how lucky I was to have such a vibrant and lively partner. But then, something caught my attention. Among her colleagues, there was one man who stood out, a handsome figure leaning in closely to Melissa, sharing a joke. I pushed down a wave of unease that stirred within me. I shook off the creeping feeling of doubt and kept searching for any information about the resort. I came across a few reviews, all glowing, praising the atmosphere and the services offered. But something nagged at me, an unshakable sensation that I couldn't quite identify. It felt irrational, yet I couldn't ignore it. Maybe it was just the stress of our daily lives weighing on me, but the image of that man lingered in my thoughts. I dismissed it, telling myself I was being overly sensitive, imagining things that weren't there. I didn't want to believe that there could be any shadow cast over our relationship, especially when I was about to do something so lovely for Melissa. After gathering all the details, I composed a message to Melissa, playfully teasing her about my top secret surprise for the weekend. I told her I couldn't wait to reveal the details. The thrill of anticipation surged through me as I hit send. Later that evening, as I prepared for bed, I felt a flicker of anxiety again. It was an odd feeling, an inkling that perhaps I should have been more cautious. But I brushed it aside, convincing myself that my focus should be on the weekend ahead. After all, we were about to embark on a getaway that could rekindle the love and intimacy that had always defined our relationship. Little did I know that this seemingly innocent surprise would soon unravel into a web of complexity that would challenge everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and the very foundation of my family. What started as an exciting opportunity would become the beginning of a journey that would test my heart and reshape my understanding of our lives together. As the days passed since I stumbled upon that notification about the spa getaway, an unsettling feeling began to grow within me. What should have been a joyous time of anticipation had morphed into a nagging discomfort that I couldn't shake. I wanted to trust Melissa completely, but my heart couldn't ignore the fleeting doubt that crept into my thoughts. The image of that man, leaning in close to her, lingered in my mind like a shadow. I had convinced myself that I was being paranoid. Surely, my wife wouldn't betray our family, especially after everything we had built together. But the more I observed her behavior, the more I began to notice changes that set off alarm bells in my mind. Melissa had always been the type of person who kept a healthy balance between work and family. Recently, however, she seemed more preoccupied with her job than ever before, often staying late and taking calls that she didn't want me to overhear. It started subtly. I would see her typing away at her laptop long after the kids were in bed, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the screen. On those nights, she would occasionally glance at her phone, a quick smile breaking her serious demeanor before she'd quickly compose herself. I tried to dismiss it, attributing her late nights to work stress or looming deadlines. After all, the world of corporate projects can be demanding, and I understood that. But as days turned into weeks, the hints of something more significant began to emerge. One evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I overheard her on the phone in the living room. Her voice was soft, almost flirtatious, and it sent a chill down my spine. I couldn't make out all the words, but I distinctly heard her laugh, an easy, free-spirited laugh that felt unfamiliar. I froze in place, my heart pounding. Was this the same laugh I used to cherish, the one that used to echo around our home, filling every corner with warmth? It felt as if she were sharing a secret that was meant for someone else. That night, as I lay in bed, I wrestled with the impulse to confront her. Part of me wanted to call her out on what I was feeling, to lay my heart bare and ask for the truth. But the other part, the part that wanted to believe in our love, held me back. I told myself I needed to be sure before making accusations that could shatter everything. So, I took a step I never thought I would have to take. I began to observe her. At first, it was innocent enough. I would casually check in on her schedule, trying to gauge her time at work. But as the days went by, I found myself more and more preoccupied with tracking her movements. I would glance at her phone whenever she left it unattended, trying to piece together the puzzle I felt was emerging. Then came the day of a company event, one I had heard her mention in passing. It was supposed to be a networking opportunity for her and her colleagues, a gathering that would take place at a trendy downtown venue. As the date approached, a feeling of dread coiled tightly in my stomach. I debated whether to simply let her go or to make an excuse to attend as well. After much internal struggle, I decided that I needed to see for myself what was happening. On the evening of the event, I donned a casual yet professional outfit, telling the kids I had a last-minute work obligation. They accepted my excuse without question, their focus elsewhere as they settled down to play video games. I drove to the venue, my heart racing with anticipation and fear. As I parked the car, I couldn't shake the sense of betrayal that clung to me like a shadow. Entering the venue was a surreal experience. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement and laughter, but all I could feel was an overwhelming sense of dread. I scanned the room, searching for Melissa. And then, I saw her. She was standing in a corner, laughing animatedly with a group of colleagues. Among them was the man from the photo, the one who had ignited my suspicions. My heart sank as I felt an icy grip of anxiety tighten around me. I positioned myself at a distance, trying to remain inconspicuous, my pulse pounding in my ears. As I watched, I couldn't help but notice the way he leaned in closer to her, the way she playfully nudged him with her shoulder. In that moment, the world around me faded away, leaving only the two of them in focus. I felt as if I were drowning in a pool of uncertainty, waves of doubt crashing over me. Time seemed to stand still as I took in their interactions. Melissa's laughter rang out again, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. It felt so different from the laughs we shared at home. It was a laugh that belonged to someone else, a person I didn't know. Suddenly, she caught sight of me. Our eyes locked for a brief moment, and in that instant, 1,000 unspoken words hung between us. Her expression shifted from surprise to something unreadable, and I could feel my heart drop. I had become a spectator in my own life, and I had no idea how to navigate the emotions that were threatening to consume me. I had come to gather evidence, but instead, I found myself paralyzed by the reality of what I was witnessing. The atmosphere of the event faded into the background, leaving me with a single thought: I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. And with that, I resolved to uncover the reality behind the smiles, the laughter, and the moments I feared would change everything. The energy in the venue was intoxicating, but all I could feel was a cold knot forming in my stomach. I had managed to find a hidden spot near the back, clutching a drink that had long since gone warm, watching the scene unfold in front of me. Melissa was at the center of a small circle, her laughter ringing out like music that once brought me joy but now felt like a dagger in my heart. As I observed, I noticed the way she leaned in, her body language open and inviting, her eyes sparkling with excitement as she engaged with her colleagues. It was a stark contrast to the subdued demeanor I had seen at home lately. The man from the photograph, Eric, stood closely beside her, their conversation animated. He would occasionally brush against her arm, and each time he did, I felt the heat of betrayal wash over me. My heart raced as I took in the scene, replaying the events of the past few weeks in my mind. I could feel my palms sweat as the knot in my stomach twisted tighter. It was a cruel irony to be surrounded by laughter and chatter yet feel so utterly alone. I was a ghost in a room full of life, consumed by the fear that I was about to lose everything I held dear. Suddenly, Eric leaned in closer, his face mere inches from hers. They shared a private joke, and I watched as her laughter bubbled forth, genuine and unguarded. At that moment, I felt the air leave my lungs. It was as if time had stopped, and I was left with the haunting realization that I was witnessing a connection I never thought possible between them. A connection that was meant for me, that belonged in our home, now blossomed before my very eyes amid strangers. My mind raced, processing the undeniable evidence of flirtation. The way Eric placed his hand on the small of her back, how she responded with a playful shove. This was more than a friendship, more than harmless office banter. I felt anger bubbling within me. hot and consuming, but at the same time, a sense of despair began to sink in. I could feel the tears welling in my eyes, threatening to spill over, but I fought them back. I refused to break down here, not in front of everyone, not in front of my wife and the man who seemed to have stolen her laughter. I turned away, the emotions surging inside me reaching a boiling point. I couldn't bear to watch anymore, it felt like a betrayal that sliced deeper than any knife. I needed air to escape this suffocating reality. The crowd swirled around me as I navigated my way toward the exit, each step feeling heavier than the last. I was aware of the whispers and laughter behind me, the joyous ambiance contrasting sharply with the despair that had wrapped itself around my heart. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me like a splash of cold water, momentarily shocking me back to reality. I took a deep breath, grounding myself, trying to quell the tumult of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. The vibrant city lights blurred in my vision as tears threatened to spill over. I leaned against the wall, trying to regain composure, my heart racing with a mix of hurt and anger. I had seen enough. I had enough proof to confront her, to demand the truth. But did I want to confront her? What if my suspicions were unfounded? Yet deep down, I knew the truth I had seen was undeniable. As I stood there, battling the tempest within me, I realized there was no turning back. I had to face the reality of my shattered trust, no matter how painful it might be. The drive home felt like an eternity, each second stretching out painfully as I replayed the events of the evening in my mind. The laughter, the closeness, the undeniable chemistry between Melissa and Eric haunted me. I felt a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, betrayal. But beneath it all lay a cold, hard determination to confront her. I needed answers, and I was going to demand them. Once I arrived home, the house was quiet. The kids were already tucked into bed, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in their father's heart. I took a moment to gather my thoughts, pacing the dimly lit living room, and feeling the weight of the silence pressing down on me. When Melissa finally came home, I felt my heart race once more. She entered through the front door, her laughter still lingering in the air as she called out, "Dan? I'm home." I could hear the cheerfulness in her voice, and it made my stomach churn. How could she be so carefree after what I had just witnessed? I turned to face her, my expression a mixture of hurt and determination. She paused, noticing the tension in the air. "Hey, what's wrong?" she asked, a hint of concern crossing her features. "Sit down, Melissa," I said, my voice steady but laced with an edge of pain. She hesitated for a moment but complied, sensing the gravity of the moment. I took a deep breath, feeling the anger boil beneath the surface. "We need to talk." "What about?" she asked, her brow furrowing in confusion. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my pictures until I found the images I had taken that evening. I felt a lump in my throat as I handed it to her. "I saw you tonight, with Eric." Her eyes widened, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of guilt cross her face. "Dan, it's not what you think," she began, but I cut her off. "No, Melissa, I watched you. The way you laughed with him, the way he touched you. It was more than just colleagues." My voice cracked, the weight of the words threatening to crush me. "How could you do this to us?" She looked down at the screen, the color draining from her face as she scrolled through the photos. The realization seemed to sink in, and for a moment, silence enveloped us. I could almost see the gears turning in her mind as she processed the evidence laid before her. "Dan, please, let me explain," she started again, but I could see the defenses she had built up were crumbling. "Explain what?" "How you've been leading a double life. How you could flirt with another man right in front of me. You kept secrets, Melissa." The frustration poured out of me, the tears I had held back all evening now threatening to spill over. She looked up at me, her expression shifting from panic to remorse. "I never meant for it to go this far. It was just harmless flirting at first. You know how it is at work." "Harmless flirting?" I interrupted, incredulous. "That's what you call it? Do you think I believe that? This isn't just a little flirtation, this is betrayal. You've crossed a line." Her face fell as she finally seemed to grasp the gravity of her actions. "Dan, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. It just happened." I felt the weight of her words crash over me like a tidal wave, the anger mingling with the deep pain in my chest. "It just happened? What's your excuse? You've put our entire family at risk for what? Some excitement? A moment of attention?" She looked down, tears welling in her eyes. "I didn't think about the consequences. I should have. I should have told you. I'm sorry, Dan. I never wanted you to find out this way. But the damage was done. The trust we had built over the years felt shattered. And I was left standing in the wreckage. The warmth of our home felt foreign now, filled with the echoes of laughter that had once brought us joy. As we sat in silence, I realized that this conversation would change everything. I had opened Pandora's box, and now we had to navigate the chaos that lay within. The weight of the decision hung heavily on my shoulders as I paced around the kitchen, each step echoing the turmoil inside me. I had spent a restless night wrestling with my thoughts, replaying the conversation with Melissa over and over again. The pain of betrayal was raw, but more than that, I was consumed with the knowledge that our children needed to know the truth. It wasn't just about Melissa's infidelity, it was about the fabric of our family that had been irrevocably torn. As I glanced around the kitchen, I took in the pictures of our happy moments, birthdays, holidays, and vacations. All lined up on the fridge, reminders of the life we had built together. It struck me then how fragile that happiness truly was. I had decided to gather the kids around the dinner table that evening. It felt necessary, even if it broke my heart to think of how it would affect them. They deserved to hear the truth from me, not through whispers or gossip. But the thought of seeing their innocent faces crumble was almost unbearable. I could already feel my heart racing as I prepared for what was to come. The kids returned home from their various activities just as I was setting the table. Catherine, our eldest at 18, walked in first, followed closely by Jack, who was 16, with Max, the youngest at 13, trailing behind. They immediately sensed the tension in the air, a heaviness that hung over us like an impending storm. "Dad, what's going on?" Catherine asked, her voice laced with concern as she dropped her bag onto the floor. Jack leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his expression a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Max, oblivious to the gravity of the situation, shuffled in with a snack in hand, blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing in our family. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Can you all sit down, please? There's something important I need to talk to you about." My voice trembled slightly, but I forced myself to maintain composure. The kids exchanged glances, a silent communication that seemed to echo the uncertainty in the room. They settled around the table, their expressions shifting from confusion to worry. I could see the wheels turning in their minds, the anticipation of what was coming next. "I know this might come as a shock to you, but I need to be honest," I began, trying to find the right words. "Melissa and I have been going through a really difficult time. I want you to know that what I'm about to tell you is the truth, no matter how hard it is to hear." Catherine's brow furrowed as she listened intently. Jack shifted in his seat, his arms tightening across his chest. Max munched on his snack, glancing between his siblings and me. The innocence of youth clashing with the gravity of the moment. "Mom, she made some choices that hurt our family," I continued, feeling the tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "She has been unfaithful to me." The words felt like daggers as they left my lips, slicing through the silence and piercing the heart of our family. Catherine's eyes widened in disbelief, while Jack's expression turned to one of shock. "What do you mean? How could she do that?" Catherine asked, her voice rising slightly. Jack was silent, the realization dawning upon him as he processed my words. "I don't have all the answers," I replied, my voice breaking. "But I saw her with someone else, and it hurts more than I can say. I wish it were different, but this is our reality now." Max, sensing the tension but not fully understanding the implications, looked between us. "Is Mom in trouble?" he asked, his voice small. The innocence of his question shattered my heart further. How could I explain the complexities of adulthood to a child who just wanted to feel safe? Catherine shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "This can't be true. Mom wouldn't do that. She loves us." "I thought so too," I replied, my heart aching for my children. "But love can sometimes lead to choices that hurt. I never wanted to put you through this, but you deserve to know the truth." The silence that followed felt heavy and suffocating. I could see their worlds shifting beneath them, the foundations of their understanding crumbling. Catherine looked down, tears spilling onto her cheeks, while Jack clenched his fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. Max, still trying to grasp the situation, looked confused, not fully comprehending the depth of the betrayal. "It's not fair," Jack finally exclaimed, his voice rising. "Why would Mom do this? We're a family. She's supposed to love us." Catherine wiped her tears, anger flashing in her eyes. How can you just sit there and say this? You need to talk to her. This doesn't make any sense. I felt the walls closing in around me as their voices rose in protest. The chaos of emotions swirled around the table, and I realized I was not just breaking the news to them, I was witnessing the destruction of their childhood innocence. Their belief in our family's unity was crumbling before my eyes. I know it's confusing and painful, I said, my voice trembling. But I promise we'll figure this out together. You're not alone in this. We'll find a way to navigate through this mess. But deep down, I could feel the gravity of the situation sinking in. The tears of my children felt like shrapnel, ripping through the fabric of our family. I felt like I was losing them, losing the connection we once shared, and the enormity of it all threatened to crush me. As I looked around the table, I could see the pain etched on their faces. My heart shattered further, knowing that our family was forever changed. The love we had built was now a fragile thing, and the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. I wished I could shield them from the heartache, but I knew that we had to confront the truth together, no matter how painful it would be. The air was thick with tension as my words hung in the space between us, an invisible barrier separating my children from the reality I had just thrust upon them. Catherine's face crumpled as she absorbed the news, her eyes searching mine for answers I didn't have. Jack's anger simmered just beneath the surface, while Max remained in a state of confusion, oblivious to the full weight of the situation. Dad, this doesn't make any sense. Catherine cried, her voice a mixture of disbelief and sorrow. Mom has always been there for us. She wouldn't just betray you like this. I felt the sting of her words, the disbelief reflecting my internal struggle. I know it's hard to understand, Kat. I'm still trying to process it myself, I admitted, my voice trembling. Jack slammed his fist on the table, a visceral response to the emotional turmoil enveloping us. You're telling us that everything we thought was real is just a lie? How could she do this to us? I wished I had the words to comfort him, to reassure him that everything would be okay. But the truth was, I didn't know how we would heal from this. I don't have all the answers, Jack. But what I do know is that we'll get through this together, as a family. But what does that even mean? He shouted, his frustration bubbling over. Mom can't just walk back in after this. What if she doesn't even want to fix it? His words struck me like a thunderbolt, and I realized he was right. There was no guarantee that our family would return to the way it once was. My heart ached at the thought of the rift that had formed between us, and I felt utterly powerless to mend it. Max, still trying to grasp the gravity of the conversation, looked at his siblings with wide eyes. Is Mom going to leave? What's going to happen to us? His innocent questions cut through the tension, a reminder that amidst our adult struggles, we were still a family with a child's perspective. Max, I don't know, I said softly, my heart breaking for him. But I promise we'll figure this out. I'll talk to your mom, and we'll make sure you're taken care of. Catherine shook her head, her voice trembling. But Dad, it's not just about us. What about you? Are you okay? I felt my heart clench at her concern, realizing how deeply this was affecting them all. I'm going to be okay. It's going to take time for all of us to heal. I need you to know that I love you both so much, and no matter what happens, we'll face it together. But even as I spoke those words, I could see the doubt in their eyes. The trust we had built was fragile, and I feared for what lay ahead. The reality of our family's situation was settling in, and I couldn't escape the feeling that our lives would never be the same again. As we sat around the table, the silence that followed felt heavy with uncertainty. I could see Catherine's resolve begin to crack as she wiped away her tears, while Jack's fists remained clenched, grappling with the whirlwind of emotions coursing through him. Max, still confused, looked from one sibling to the other, trying to make sense of the chaos. I wanted to reach out, to comfort them, but I felt paralyzed. The weight of the truth had created a chasm between us, one that would take time to bridge. As the reality of our situation sank in, I felt a profound sense of loss for the family we once were, and a daunting uncertainty about the future that lay ahead. For now, all we could do was sit in that silence, grappling with the truth that had shattered our world, hoping that somehow, amidst the pain, we could begin to rebuild what had been broken. The atmosphere was thick with tension, a palpable weight that hung in the air long after I had delivered the bombshell about Melissa's infidelity. The initial shock had morphed into a deep-seated anger that coursed through my children, and I felt every bit of it, like a sharp knife piercing through my heart. Just as I thought the dust was beginning to settle, the front door swung open, and in walked Melissa, oblivious to the storm brewing within our family. She greeted us with her usual warmth, but the moment she stepped into the kitchen, the mood shifted drastically. The smiles and casual banter she expected were replaced by heavy silence and cold glares from our children. "Hey, everyone, I'm back early," she said, her voice cheerful yet lacking the energy it once had. The atmosphere in the room turned electric. I could feel the tension radiating off Catherine and Jack, their eyes burning with unspoken accusations. "Mom," Catherine finally said, her voice steely and unyielding, "we were just talking about you." Melissa's expression shifted from confusion to concern as she glanced at me, sensing the gravity of the situation. "Talking about me? What's going on? Why don't you sit down?" I suggested, dreading the confrontation that was about to unfold. The table felt like a battlefield, and I was not sure anyone would emerge unscathed. "Is everything okay?" Melissa asked, looking between the three of them and then me, her brow furrowing. I could see her confusion deepening, but there was no point in sugarcoating things any longer. Catherine took a deep breath, her voice shaking slightly but firm. "No, it's not okay. We just found out that you've been unfaithful to Dad." I watched as Melissa's face fell, the color draining from her cheeks as the realization hit her like a wave. "What? That's not true. I can explain." "Explain what, exactly?" Jack shot back, his voice laced with anger. "How you lied to us. How did you pretend everything was fine while you were with someone else?" I didn't mean for it to happen. You had to understand," Melissa began, her voice rising in desperation. But the children weren't having it. Catherine shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "How could you do this to us, Mom? You've always told us that family comes first. This feels like a betrayal, not just to Dad but to all of us." "Family does come first," Melissa insisted, her tone growing frantic. "I love you all, I do. I never meant to hurt anyone." But the more she pleaded, the more the distance between her and the kids seemed to grow. Jack's expression was a mixture of disappointment and anger, and he stood up, throwing his hands up in exasperation. "If you loved us, you wouldn't have done this. How can we trust you again? I know I messed up. Please just give me a chance to explain." Melissa pleaded, her voice breaking. But the damage had been done. The trust that had taken years to build was now shattered in a matter of moments. I felt a mix of emotions swirl within me, anger, sadness, and a heavy sense of defeat. I realized at that moment that Melissa had not only lost my trust but had also damaged her relationship with the kids beyond repair. The heartache was evident in their expressions, and I knew there was no way to fix it all in one conversation. "Mom, we don't want to hear excuses right now," Catherine said, her voice steady despite the tears that rolled down her cheeks. "You need to understand that this isn't just about you and Dad. It's about us. You've hurt us, and we're not sure we can forgive you." Melissa's face twisted in anguish as she looked at her children, the weight of their disappointment crashing down on her. "Please, I'm begging you to let me talk," she said, her voice breaking. But I knew it was too late. The confrontation had stripped away the facade of our family's happiness, exposing the raw pain that lay beneath. After the dust settled from the confrontation, I found myself standing in the aftermath, surrounded by my children, who were grappling with emotions far too heavy for their young hearts. Melissa had left the room, her face pale and defeated, and I could sense the shift in our family dynamic. The air was thick with sorrow, and I felt the collective weight of it pressing down on me. I looked at Catherine, Jack, and Max, their faces a mixture of hurt, confusion, and anger. At that moment, I realized my primary role was no longer as a husband to Melissa but as a father to my children. I had to step up and be the pillar they needed during this tumultuous time. "Guys," I said softly, my voice trembling as I tried to find the right words. "I know this is a lot to process, and it's painful. But I want you to know that I'm here for you. No matter what happens, we will get through this together." Catherine nodded, her tears spilling down her cheeks. "It just feels so unfair, Dad. How could she do this to us?" "I don't know, Kat," I admitted, my heart aching for her. "I don't understand it either. But we can't let her mistakes define who we are as a family. We have to support each other now more than ever." Jack remained silent, his jaw clenched, clearly wrestling with his emotions. I could see the anger still simmering beneath the surface, but I hoped that with time, he would find a way to channel that energy into something constructive. "I just can't believe this is happening," he finally said, his voice low. Our family is falling apart, and it's not fair. It's not fair at all, I agreed, feeling the weight of my disappointment. But we can't let it break us. We have each other, and we'll find a way to navigate this new reality together. Max, still unsure of how to process the chaos, looked between his siblings and me. What's going to happen now? Is Mom going to be okay? I knelt at his level, looking into his innocent eyes. I don't know what will happen with your mom, Max. But I promise you, I will always be here for you. We're a team, and we'll take this one step at a time. As I sat there, I realized that we were entering a new stage of our family life. One that would require resilience and strength we had yet to discover. It wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but I was determined to be the support system my children needed. We spent the rest of the evening together, sharing our feelings and frustrations, allowing ourselves to grieve the family we once were. It was painful, but it also felt liberating to express what had been bottled up inside. With each passing moment, I felt a sense of hope beginning to rise within me. This new chapter of our lives wouldn't erase the pain, but it would give us the chance to rebuild, to redefine what family meant to us. I understood that we would face the challenges head-on, together, and that the bonds we forged through this experience could lead to a deeper understanding of one another. I looked around at my children, their faces still etched with sadness, but now there was a glimmer of determination in their eyes. We were united in our pain, but we were also united in our love. As we embarked on this difficult journey together, I held on to the hope that we would emerge stronger, even if it meant facing the heartache of Melissa's choices along the way. This was our new beginning, and I was ready to embrace it with open arms.